Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening for a very special live stream performance from the Eugene Symphony. This was a performance from 2018 featuring Vivaldi's Four Seasons violin concertos with Rachel Barton Pine. What I thought I'd do now is just give you a little 30-minute pre-concert talk, just like we would normally have before a Eugene Symphony performance. So really glad to have you here and be able to have some time together. So first off, if you're watching this, it means you're on my Facebook page. But in order to watch this performance at 7:30, you'll see now here on the screen, these are the instructions you'll need to follow if you don't already have a password. So make sure you take the time now so you can be ready. As you can see right here, you want to go to the Eugene Symphony Watch page, which is where you'll also be able to see the performance eventually. So the page is eugenesymphony.org/watch. And if you go there now, you can scroll down and then see where you can enter your email so that you can receive a password. It's all free. You can receive a password by email. And then at 7:15, you'll have the opportunity to be able to enter that password into the page so that then you can view the performance at 7:30 and we can watch it all together. And then just a heads up that after the performance, you can come back here onto my page if you want, and I'll be live doing a little Q&A. So if you have any questions or any comments, just come on back over here and we can hang out a bit after the concert, because that's also one of my favorite things to do at Eugene Symphony performances is hang out with you guys before and after the concerts. And so today we'll be doing that virtually. So as I said before, this was a performance from February 15th, 2018. It was in my first season as music director of the Eugene Symphony, which means that this program was actually already in place when I first came. And so I just feel incredibly lucky and fortunate that I was able to be a part of this amazing community and collaborative event. This concert was actually the culmination of a year-long project in partnership with the McKenzie River Trust and Travel Lane County. We wanted to reach out to everyone in Lane County surrounding the Eugene area and basically ask for images of the McKenzie River, which is the primary water source for Eugene and just an absolute gorgeous river to drive along, to hike along, to fish in. I mean, it's just an incredible incredible place to be, and so what we asked the community for were to send us their photos of the McKenzie River in the Four Seasons, which we would then find a way to combine with Vivaldi's Four Seasons. So we received over 600 submissions, which was really incredible, and then curated those and created these slideshows that weave in and out of the movements of the Vivaldi. So in the Four Seasons concertos, you have four concertos, each one for each season. But then within each concerto, there's three different movements and three different storylines, if you will, that take place in each of the seasons. And so one of the things that I did work very, very hard on is trying to find a way to integrate the slideshows in. One of the things I knew I didn't want it to be was just like a movie slideshow thing where you just kind of sit back and just watch the screen while the musicians are in darkness and you don't actually get to see the performance itself. And so one of the things I was working on was making sure that there would be a kind of a seamless flow where you would get to appreciate what was going on in the performance and then let that music connect to some imagery and then come back to the performance and then back to the imagery. And so in each one of the movements, you'll see there are spots to focus more on the performers and then spots where we go into the slideshows a little bit. And I think it ended up having a really nice feel to it. Although, of course, in the moment, I was totally involved in what was going on stage. And in many ways, you know, this event is special. This event is special for so many ways. One of which is that the performance was completely sold out. And afterwards, people were begging us to do a repeat performance. And it's great that we have another chance to showcase this project. But also for me and my colleagues on stage, I'm sure there are many musicians who will be watching tonight. You know, all of us we did not get to enjoy the slideshow in the moment or how it all came together. We were entirely focused on the performance. So this is great for us to be able to see it again in kind of its totality, if you will. Our special guest soloist for this performance was Rachel Barton Pine, who is not only a renowned violinist, but she also does a lot of incredible work through her foundation, the Rachel Barton Pine Foundation. They do a lot of incredible work in education, in research, and building a lot of great appreciation around the incredible work that classical music does around the world. So we were really delighted to have her. It was so special for me to get to work with her, especially on these concertos, which she just absolutely owns these pieces. And I wish you had a chance to hear her description and how she describes each one of these concertos so vividly. She has such a deep understanding of every note in the piece and why they're there and the characters that Vivaldi was trying to create. As I often say, my own style of performing is really trying to take risks for the sake of communication. To bring out the character in the music. Whenever we take the safe path in a performance or take the easiest route from point A to point B, we're always losing out a little bit on the character side of things. And my goal is always to push myself to making sure that we bring out all the nuances in the music. One of the great things about working with Rachel is that I think she actually pushed my conception of what was risk taking in the Vivaldi Four Seasons and really kind of pushed me to even dig deeper into the piece and find more to bring out in it. And so in that sense, it was just a wonderful collaboration. It was also special for me because one of the things I love to do is play harpsichord along with the orchestra. Any music written during this era, the 1700s, conductors didn't exist. There were leaders, which could either be the concertmaster, the main violinist, or a continuo player on the harpsichord. So for me as a trained pianist, it's easy to move to the harpsichord, and it's great fun to be able to play along with my colleagues and perform this music the way it was meant to be performed, not with someone just up there waving their arms, but all of us there in the moment performing together. The great thing about being on the continuo part, the harpsichord, is that it is improvised. So there's a framework, there's a bass line that are played by the cello and the bass. And then the harpsichord, I can use that bass line, but then improvise all the notes that happen on top of it, which means you kind of have a leeway to do something different in every performance and to do more to bring out nuances in the music. You'll notice that I work a lot with our principal cellist, Anne Ridlington. The harpsichord and the principal cello kind of form this group that work with the solo violinist. And so you'll see the three of us doing a lot of sections together as well. So it is a really fun style of music, and this is what the Baroque era was about, was a small group of people, but this ability to have flexibility and freedom and improvisation. It's a much freer version of music, I think, than we expect, and I think it really comes through in this performance. So before we continue, just want to go back to the basics for anyone that's just joining in. This is a pre-concert talk for a live stream performance of the Eugene Symphony. The performance itself is going to take place very soon at 7:30 Pacific time, and it will not be on this page. It will be on the Eugene Symphony's watch page. So you see the details here on your screen. So please take some time now, if you haven't yet already gotten your password, to be able to watch. And go to eugenesymphony.org/watch. And if you haven't already, you can scroll down and submit your email address so that you can receive a password to be able to watch the performance. So it's all free. Just make sure you go to the page, get your password through your email, and then go back to the page. And at 7:15, you'll be able to enter that password to then get into the page. And so at 7:30, we'll finish here, and we can all go and watch this performance all together. So be sure to just take those couple little steps so that you can join with us. Okay, so let's take a look into Vivaldi's Four Seasons, this incredible music that he wrote. It's so far ahead of its time that it stuns me every time I come back to this piece. Even though I know the music so well, once I actually start looking at the music again, I'm just reminded how absolutely modern it is, and just unbelievable how Vivaldi absolutely threw caution to the wind to create the sounds and what it was like to live in the Four Seasons in the Italian countryside. So these four concertos were published in 1725, and really they are the earliest examples of what we would call program music. Music that has a very clear narration, very clear storyline that is about people and things. So not a piece that just is called, symphony or concerto, but actually have like these descriptions around it. But Vivaldi takes it much further than that. I mean, we wouldn't see this again for basically another like 100 years or even more than that till you get to the works of like Berlioz and Liszt and Wagner, and then we start seeing music that is heavily descriptive, that even has descriptions in the music. But Vivaldi did this in 1725, which is really quite remarkable, and you'll see musically what he does. Now, with each one of the movements, the 12 movements that are in these concertos, Vivaldi actually has a sonnet. He actually writes a little snippet about each movement. And these are really beautiful. So I'm actually going to read each one. Then I'll pinpoint kind of one extended technical and musical idea that Vivaldi uses to really innovatively describe what's going on. So we have first the spring, and the first movement of spring. This is Vivaldi's sonnet. Springtime is upon us. The birds celebrate her return with festive song, and murmuring streams are softly caressed by the breezes. Thunderstorms, those heralds of spring, roar, casting their dark mantle over heaven. Then they die away to silence, and the birds take up their charming songs once more. So there's actually quite a bit that goes on in this first movement. You have the lovely sounds of spring and birds, and then the thunderstorm comes through, and then back to the birds again. And I love the way Vivaldi works with the birds, where he actually not only has the solo violinist, but then uses two individual violinists in the orchestra. So three solo violins all kind of twitter away to create the sounds of birds at the beginning of this movement. And here's the sonnet for the second movement. On the flower-strewn meadow, with leafy branches rustling overhead, the goatherd sleeps, his faithful dog beside him. Now, I love this movement because we do have the goatherd sleeping, just lounging off, and we have this beautiful line in the solo violin. But the dog, the faithful dog, the sonnet doesn't really get to this, but the faithful dog is not particularly happy that his master is sleeping. And so actually over a solo viola line, one viola line, Vivaldi writes, "The dog barks." And throughout this entire movement, there's this barking dog in the solo viola. So give a listen to this little bit where you just have the sleeping goatherd, and then this bah, bah, and you kind of have this barking that interrupts consistently throughout this piece. It just always cracks me up every time. And then we come to the last movement, Sonnet for Spring. Led by the festive sound of rustic bagpipes, nymphs and shepherds lightly dance beneath the brilliant canopy of spring. The key word here is bagpipes, that drone sound. And Vivaldi creates that just wonderfully using the low instruments of the orchestra, violas, cellos, and basses, and just honking away on these just very steady drone tones. Give this a listen. Now let's move on to Summer. And the first movement of Summer has this sonnet. Beneath the blazing sun's relentless heat, men and flocks are sweltering, pines are scorched. We hear the cuckoo's voice, then sweet songs of the turtle dove and finch are heard. Soft breezes stir the air, but threatening north wind sweeps them suddenly aside. The shepherd trembles, fearful of violent storm and what may lie ahead. So in this movement, there's obviously a lot going on in this first movement, but you can see again Vivaldi's really focused on birds. There's so many different kinds of birds throughout throughout these concertos. In this movement, my favorite one, just because I love the unique way that Vivaldi achieves it, is the cuckoo. You know, this cuckoo, cuckoo. And the way Vivaldi creates it is very unique because the solo violinist is actually playing a consistent set of notes, but within this repetition of notes, you hear da 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 da, and it's answered in the orchestra as well. So check this out. Now we move on to the second movement of Summer with this sonnet. His limbs are now awakened from their repose by fear of lightning's flash and thunder's roar, as gnats and flies buzz furiously around. So there's the gnats and the flies, and this we hear under the texture in the orchestra as this yan, da dan, da dan, and that rhythm is kind of constantly throughout this piece. But what I love is the role of thunder in the background, which gets closer and fades away and gets closer and fades away throughout, and it interrupts all the phrases throughout this second movement. Now we come to the sonnet for the last movement of Summer. Alas, his worst fears were justified as the heavens roar and great hailstones beat down upon the proudly standing corn. So this last movement basically fulfills that rolling thunder that we had in the second movement, just unleashes. This is one of the most exciting movements in all the concertos. Absolutely relentless and incredible virtuosity is being shown in the entire orchestra in this movement, and you can really hear the violence of the hail in this passage. And now we move on to the third concerto, Autumn. Now, as much as summer was kind of almost a terrifying time and also kind of a lethargic time with all of the heat, autumn is a time for celebration of the harvest. And so here's the sonnet for the first movement. The peasant celebrates with song and dance the harvest safely gathered in. The cup of Bacchus flows freely, and many find their relief in deep slumber. So this is the party movement, and one of the things I love about this movement is that it starts off pretty straightforward partying, but at a certain point, someone at the party drinks a little bit too much and starts kind of stumbling around and ruining the flow of the piece. It's great fun to perform. It's really kind of scary because literally the music has to stumble around and we kind of come up on peaks and then fall and then come here and then fall. It is great fun though, and here's a little snippet of that drunken stumbling. And here's the sonnet for the second movement of Autumn. The singing and the dancing die away as cooling breezes fan the pleasant air, inviting all to sleep without a care. So they've all had their fill of food and drink, and everyone falls asleep, and they're accompanied by this very soft strumming of the lute. And of course, Vivaldi uses the harpsichord for this. And so underneath these very soft, slow-moving lines in the orchestra, you hear the plucking of a lute throughout. And now we come to the last movement of Autumn. The hunters emerge at dawn, ready for the chase, with horns and dogs and cries. Their quarry flees while they give chase. Terrified and wounded, the prey struggles on, but harried, dies. So it sounds kind of dark. I mean, it's happy music because we got to think of it from the hunter's perspective, which is, yay, they're going to be eating well for the foreseeable future. Kind of sad for the deer, obviously. At any rate, this is a really fun, showy movement, and one of the great things in here, that again, so much character that Vivaldi gives, but really shocking and fun is the idea of gunshots during the hunt. And you'll see in this clip just how brilliantly Vivaldi brings out the idea of the hunt and then these shots, these gunshots. And now we come to the final concerto, Winter. Here's the sonnet for the first movement. Shivering, frozen mid the frosty snow in biting, stinging winds, running to and fro to stamp one's icy feet, teeth chattering in the bitter chill. It's the chattering teeth that I love, the shivering and the chattering teeth you're going to hear throughout this concerto. But right here at the beginning, you can see very unique how Vivaldi creates the idea of shivering with a quick turn between two notes in the strings, but also the harmonies he uses are very strange. Again, it's like, if you just heard this opening, it could have been written, in this century. This could be an edgy piece of modern music, but this is Vivaldi trying to convey the icy chill, and he does it absolutely brilliantly. And now we have the second movement of Winter. To rest contentedly beside the hearth, while those outside are drenched by pouring rain. So this is a movement that's told from the perspective of being nice and warm inside. It's a very beautiful, warm movement, but throughout, Vivaldi uses pizzicati in the strings when they pluck their strings to create the sounds of raindrops. And then if you listen very carefully under the texture, you'll hear this kind of wishy-washy playing in the cello, in the solo cello, which is sort of like it's more like the streams of water, maybe like running down a window pane, if you will. And now we come to the last movement of Winter. We tread the icy path slowly and cautiously for fear of tripping and falling, then turn abruptly, slip, crash on the ground, and rising, hasten on across the ice lest it crack up. We feel the chill north winds course through the home despite the locked and bolted doors. This is Winter, which nonetheless brings its own delights. There's so much that goes on in this movement, obviously. There's some slipping, some sliding, some falling, some running across the snow. You got kind of the whole thing going on in this piece. But the moments of sliding are really, again, very unique in how he opens up this movement. And so just to show you a little bit of that. So I hope all of this just gives you a taste of how unique this work is, despite being 300 years old. What Vivaldi is doing is so relevant and edgy, and it still feels that way when we hear it today. And I think one of the beautiful things about combining this music with imagery from today, from the community of Eugene, is that immediacy is sort of relived in the music. That these are the seasons not only in the countryside in Italy in the 1700s, but it's the scenes today. It's the lives that we live today when we go through the four seasons, and it's all here in this incredible music. So a big thank you to Rachel Barton Pine and all of my colleagues on stage for giving us permission to be able to show this performance to you all this evening. Thank you to the amazing staff that we have at the Eugene Symphony who have responded so quickly and creatively to the new reality that we are all in, and setting this all up so that we could have this moment together this evening. And thank you to all of you for joining us, for your optimism, and for your encouragement and everything that you do to keep our spirits uplifted. That's what we hope that this evening and this music can do for you as well. And that's what we want to continue to do in the time ahead until we work our way through all of this uncertainty. We want to continue to bring you hope, comfort, joy, beauty, all of the things that music does best. And we want to be here for all of you. So please stay safe and healthy, and we hope before long we'll see you back in the concert hall.